The history of humanity is, at its core, a struggle for survival. And at the heart of this struggle lies water. However, throughout history, water has been a poison that killed us. It was dirty, contaminated, and full of disease. To survive, humankind sought ways to filter water, to change it. And the solutions they found did not just quench their thirst. They built empires, crossed oceans, sparked revolutions, and turned the world into a global village. Today, on History Glitch, I'm going to tell you the story of 6 different drinks that changed the course of history. In this journey from the Stone Age to the modern era, you will see that the liquid in your glass is not just a drink, but liquefied history. If you're ready, let's fill our first glass and go to the dawn of civilization. It all started about 10,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt. One of the biggest glitches in human history, a system error, happened here. History books tell us that humans settled down to farm and eat bread. But what if I told you that was a lie? Archaeological evidence shows that the real reason our ancestors domesticated grain wasn't to fill their stomachs, but to get high. Our first drink, beer. Back then, drinking water was like playing Russian roulette. But when grains were fermented, the resulting alcohol killed the germs in the water. Beer was not just an intoxicant, it was a sterile liquid that ensured survival. For the Sumerians, beer was civilization itself. Even in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the wild man Enkidu only becomes human after drinking beer and eating bread. So, civilization begins with beer. Think of the pyramids. What do you think the workers who carried those massive stones were paid? Money? Gold? No. They were given about 4 liters of beer every day. The pyramids of Egypt were built by a workforce that was not drunk but buzzed, fueled by liquid bread. Beer was humanity's first social network, its first currency, and the biggest biological reason we settled down. Let's fast forward a bit. We are going to the first millennium BC, to ancient Greece and Rome. Here, our second drink takes the stage, wine. If beer was the drink of the common people stored in grain silos, wine was the drink of trade, philosophy, and the elite. For the Greeks, wine was the litmus test of civilization. To them, there were 2 types of people in the world, those who drank wine and everyone else. They viewed anyone who drank beer as a barbarian. But there is a nuance here. The Greeks never drank wine pure. They always mixed it with water. Drinking pure wine was madness. It was barbaric. Wine mixed with water, however, opened the mind and deepened conversation. The word symposium actually means drinking together. The philosophical debates of Plato and Socrates were actually wine table conversations. When the Roman Empire rose, wine turned from a status symbol into an instrument of empire. Wherever the Roman army went, they brought vineyards with them. Today, France and Italy's most famous wine regions are actually the logistical lines of Roman legions. With Christianity, wine turned into sacred blood and became the cornerstone of European culture. But when the Middle Ages ended and the Age of Discovery began, the world needed something stronger. Wine or beer were insufficient for crossing oceans and discovering new worlds because they spoiled on long sea voyages. This is where chemistry entered the stage, distillation. Our third glass, spirits, specifically brandy, rum, and whiskey. These drinks were the essence of alcohol. They were durable, strong, and most importantly, a currency. Especially rum became the fuel for one of the darkest chapters in history, the slave trade. European merchants took sugar molasses from the Caribbean, turned it into rum in America, took this rum to Africa to buy slaves, and took those slaves back to the Caribbean sugarcane fields. This terrible triangle trade turned on rum. At the same time, what ignited the American Revolutionary War wasn't just tea, but taxes on molasses and rum. George Washington constantly distributed whiskey and rum to his soldiers, not to boost morale, but to keep them alive. Sailors on ships crossing oceans were kept under discipline thanks to a mixture of rum and water called grog. Spirits were the fuel of the ruthless power that drew the world's borders but also enslaved millions. By the 17th century, Europe began to wake up from a centuries-long drunkenness. Imagine a society drinking beer for breakfast, wine for lunch, and beer for dinner. People were constantly slightly drunk. Their brains were foggy. Then, a dark, bitter, and hot drink from the East changed everything. Our fourth glass, coffee. Coffee was the drink that sobered Europe up. Alcohol is a depressant. It numbs you. Coffee is a stimulant. It opens the mind. This biological shift led to the greatest intellectual explosion in history, the Age of Enlightenment. Coffee houses began to open. Instead of shouting drunkenly, people started drinking coffee and talking about politics, science, literature, and trade. Isaac Newton held his debates on gravity in coffee houses. The London Stock Exchange was founded in a coffee house. The insurance company Lloyd's was a coffee house. Even the spark that started the French Revolution was struck at the Café de Foix in Paris, when Camille Desmoulins climbed onto a table and shouted, "To arms!" Europe's age of reason was actually the age of caffeine. Coffee was the mental fuel that built the modern world, democracy, and capitalism. As the Industrial Revolution gained speed, the world's superpower, Britain, went after another plant. Our fifth glass, tea. Tea was actually a Chinese monopoly. The British became so addicted to tea that the entire economy of the empire was tied to the tea trade. However, China didn't want British goods in exchange for tea. They only accepted silver. When Britain's silver reserves began to melt away, they created one of the biggest and most immoral glitches in history. The British secretly smuggled opium grown in India into China, turning the population into drug addicts. The Chinese gave back their silver to buy opium, and the British used that silver to buy tea. This is why the Opium Wars broke out. Britain guaranteed its tea time by poisoning a nation. Tea was not just a drink for pleasure, it was also the engine of the Industrial Revolution. Factory workers could stay on their feet during those long, grueling shifts thanks to hot tea and the sugar in it. Tea was the battery of the empire on which the sun never sets. And finally, we come to the 20th century, the American century. Our sixth glass, the symbol of globalization, Coca-Cola. In the beginning, it was a brain tonic sold by an Atlanta pharmacist to soothe nerves, containing coca leaves and cola nuts. However, with marketing genius and the power of capitalism, it turned into the world's most recognized brand. Coca-Cola's real rise happened with World War II. The American Army set up Coca-Cola factories wherever soldiers were, from the deserts of North Africa to the Pacific Islands. General Eisenhower thought Coca-Cola was as vital as ammunition. When the war ended, the American soldiers left, but Coca-Cola stayed. It was now the liquid form of the American dream, freedom, consumer society, and globalization. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, one of the first things to cross to the other side of the Berlin Wall was this brown fizzy drink. If you can find a bottle of Coca-Cola even in the remotest corner of the world today, this is the victory of the American century. Here is the summary of human history. We settled down with beer, stratified with wine, exploited the world with spirits, woke up with coffee, industrialized with tea, and globalized with Coca-Cola. History wasn't just written on battlefields, but on kitchen tables, in ship holds, in coffee houses, and in factories. Next time you pick up a glass, look closely at the liquid inside. Because what you are drinking doesn't just quench your thirst, it circulates thousands of years of history through your veins. I am History Glitch. We will continue to discover the invisible, liquid face of history. Stay tuned.